Let the dragon consume you! Enemy sighted. Stop the payload! Stop the payload! In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Birdwatcher's back at it one more time. Here's your host, Brian and Clay. They're about to bring you some sweet Overwatch action.
And we're back. Welcome to this episode of the Birdwatchers podcast, episode 45. We're going to be doing stage 2, week 2. And let's get into it. I mean, first exciting thing that happened news-wise is that the Storm Rising patch is out. So that event has started. I'm not sure when it ends. I didn't check on that because I haven't gotten to play it yet because I'm recording this episode. But one thing we did get with that patch outside of the event stuff that you usually get, the skins, a lot of those are cool. So go to the website and check those out. But we got a few small buffs, a few adjustments. So for Junkrat, we got the frag launcher adjustment, which increased the projectile speeds from 20 to 25, and then they bounce a little less and explode sooner. So if you play Junkrat, go practice that because it does change things a bit. And Reaper pretty much got his shadow stepped overhauled, I would say. He can now do it while moving. There's some nuances with how he comes out, how fast he comes out of shadow step, and the fact that he can do it while jumping and other things like that. So read more up on that and play around with that to figure out like how it works for you. It's definitely a change of pace, and there's probably some cool stuff you can do with it. We did get to see some Reaper play actually in OWL this week, so we'll get to that. But the other thing is Symmetra. So now railings and other objects don't break your line of sight for putting up a teleporter. So this would affect, like, if you were trying to put your teleporter down and there's a railing in the way, it would just put on top of the railing because it looks at it as a physical object. Whereas now they don't do that. They don't kind of fragment that. So it just moves to the next furthest spot in a clear line of sight, which is beneficial because there's been a bunch of missed teleports setups from that. So I'm happy they fixed that piece. But outside of that, nothing else big news-wise, right? It's kind of a straightforward week for Overwatch here. The one thing I will mention is, as usual, we have our watch parties coming up, the Atlanta Royal Family. We have 2 games this week, and I know it's a lot. We have another back-to-back week. And the reason this kind of happens is with the new scheduling system they have. Back-to-back games, each team has them at certain parts of the week. We just got unlucky enough where all of ours are front-loaded. So towards like the second half of the season, you will see less back-to-back games for Atlanta Reign. But this week we did have 2. And then this upcoming week we will have 2. So Friday, both are going to be at Battle and Brew. So come through there whenever. But both are, the first one is Friday for the New York match. And then the Charge match is Sunday. So I'll see you there if you come through. Come cheer on with us. Last Sunday, the watch party turned into a gaming party, which turned into a Korean barbecue party. So that's something that kind of happens when these watch parties happen. But all that aside, let's get into some of these scores for this week. So stage 2, week 2 again. And as usual, I'm going to leave out the 3 matches we're doing today out of the score to try to give you, people who haven't watched the matches and are just listening to this to kind of get the overview of what happened. I don't want to spoil it till I get to it, right? Trying to leave a little bit of mystery. But we started out Thursday with Paris Eternal facing the Florida Mayhem. Paris took that 3-1. Then we had New York going against the Justice, right? 4-0 that's kind of expected. We had Vancouver versus Seoul Dynasty. Vancouver's still been on a tear. They 3-1 there. And then we had Toronto Defiant versus Philadelphia Fusion, where Philadelphia Fusion has been one of those teams that has been like just completely ups and downs. They're either 4-0ing or 3-1ing people or getting 4-0'd. It's very interesting to watch. I'm not sure what the issue is, considering that team has just been kind of silent overall, especially the players. Their players aren't really known to be social media personalities, so not much info on what's going on there. But it's a good thing to watch to see what happens. Then we move into Friday, and we won't be doing a rain game this episode because there's a lot of teams I wanted to cover and look at that I haven't really looked at in depth that had some pretty fun games this week. And we had some too. We had some back and forth. But we did play Los Angeles Valiant on Friday. Unfortunately, that did not go in our favor. Rain got beat there, 3-2 in the Valiant's favor. And then Uprising versus Spark is going to be one we're going to talk about today. That was a great match. That was followed by Charge versus San Francisco Shock. Charge getting 4-0'd by the Shock. San Francisco Shock just looking like a lot of people are talking about them on the level of New York and Vancouver now, which is, a hell of a switch in perspective now that they've kind of proven themselves in the Stage 1 playoffs. Charge, a team that is very confusing what's happening. They look kind of promising as one of the Chinese teams, but it looks like now they don't know where to go with the team. So interesting to see what they change up there. We move into Saturday where we had the Hunters face the Dragons. That's going to be another one we're going to talk about today, which was a great match. Spitfire versus Fusion. Spitfire 2-1 the Fusion. So no 4-0 there, right? Vancouver Titans versus the Outlaws. 3-1 for the Vancouver Titans. Once again, expected. There was a lot of controversy. Well, not even controversy. There's a lot of hearsay on the side of Reddit versus the league, right? As far as what Outlaws should have done. Since in that map they did play DPS focus comps, and then they played the Vancouver's game when it came to the whole goats, and then, they said they had to and blah, 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 but it still resulted in a loss. So they're getting a lot of flack for that. We moved into the Dallas Fuel versus Defiant game. Dallas Fuel taking that 4-0, which is kind of odd because the Defiant have been on a roll lately. So to see them lose in this back-to-back week in both games is kind of, especially picking up the I'm 37, which is he's been a meme for a little bit and has performed very well in his role as far as stepping up on this team after they lost Stellar. But who knows what's going on there. Then we have the Gladiators versus the Charge. Once again, a 4-0 against the Charge. It just seems like they don't know how to put the pieces together for this stage, and they're definitely struggling there. And then we move into Sunday where we had Fuel face Eternal, 2-1 there. I would have thought it would have been a steamroll, but it doesn't seem like Eternal's still losing, right? But it doesn't seem like they're struggling as much as I thought they would be in this shift in meta. Then we faced the Justice this week and won that 3-1, which was a well-needed win for Atlanta Reign after, the roster switch and everything that's been going on. And we've been kind of in this slump as far as trying to figure things out. The absence of Daco, mysterious absence. But, that win, although it's against the Justice, it's just something that we needed to do to get out of the slump. So hopefully that continues into next week and we keep that confidence and keep growing with this new roster and they kind of meld together. We then moved to Excelsior versus Mayhem. That's a 4-0. That's a no-brainer there. And then we had the first battle for LA so far, which people have been looking forward to. And we're going to talk about that for our feature match. So that being said, let's go ahead and hop into it, right? We're going to start off with the Spark versus Uprising game. So Uprising lately has, set the record with the most reverse sweeps in a row. I think they had 3. And then we have Spark, who's been, they started off kind of interesting. Naturally, everybody loved the jerseys, right? So that kind of gave them a boost in fanship. But then people noticed they were actually playing pretty solidly. Some questions about the roster choices, which they kind of fixed at this point, which shows the kind of performance they've increased. But this was definitely one that I thought would go in the Uprising's favor, kind of hands down. But the Spark put up a fight. So we go to Oasis. We start off with our control map here. We start on University, and the Spark start off dominant, right? They start off with 100%, to 0 completion, which is very convincing. Then that takes us to City Center, and Uprising do better than they did the first time. They get that initial cap, and after some back and forth, they end up taking this round. And this pushes us to the third round, which is Gardens. And on Garden, Spark come out with this bunker comp, which is kind of a smart idea if you can win that first team fight, right? And they have Crystal in, by the way, which is somebody who people have been clamoring for to put in, kind of known from the Chinese World Cup team as going to be a prodigy, like him and Evital coming over to the league. They both kind of stood out, and Crystal really hasn't played much, and people have wondered why. Some say it was language barrier, blah, blah, blah. But he's in now, and he goes off on Bastion, and the crowd's going crazy because he's doing really well. And this comp here actually makes sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if more teams start running it, because on Garden, on Oasis, you have that lip that's over the midpoint. So you have this kind of constant high ground. And you can always jump down and then get back up there fairly easily. If you're the team controlling the point, you can set up easier. So that strategy works in their favor, and Spark ended up taking Oasis and going up 1-0 on the map count. So we go to Clay's favorite map, right? Anubis. And we have Adora sub in for Crystal. So they take Crystal out. And we have the Uprising starting on attack. So Spark on defense, and they do the high ground comp, which a lot of teams are using again. That's comeback. That's standard high ground comp. And then Uprising try to break through it with the triple DPS dive comp, which is smart. And they struggle. They struggle on point 1 and on point 2. Until Gujue, they catch him slipping. He actually makes a good play here where he primals, but the timing of it is not great, and it puts him out of position, and they end up actually sneaking the cap here with about 2 minutes remaining, which is solid. And then Spark on attack, they have an easier time on point 1, but they end up struggling on point 2. And then they're able to cap with just seconds remaining. So they get a bit of time, right? You get that boost of a minute on top of your time if you have some left in round 2. And in round 2, we have, another issue here with Gujue where, Sparks start off on attack first. They only get like one attempt based on their time. But Color Hex is on Widow and not really behind what he thinks he's hiding behind. And at the beginning, he ends up burning a bunch of important time by dying. And they get full health. And then we move to attack for Uprising. They use that triple DPS dive comp again. And that's kind of a disruptive comp. So it allows you to get a pick and then you kind of steamroll that, which they do. They end up taking that point and they end up taking this map. So now we're kind of tied up 1-1, right? So it's a great start to this match for the back and forth. So we have Crystal sub back in for Adora. And we have Uprising starting on attack again. So Uprising have a smooth attack pretty much through all points in big part to RCK. So I don't want to say I'm tired of speaking about RCK because it's crazy that he just got in the league and he's kind of performing this well. It almost reminds me of when EQO came into the league last year and was immediately just performing, right? Like everybody was talking about, like I would say EQO's he's more confident in his play, where RCK is more of a quiet guy. But it definitely showed that they knew they could perform and they just start performing and they keep that up. So if RCK can keep doing this, because EQO kept that performance throughout all of last season, and that showed in the final playoffs, right? So if RCK can keep that up, by all means, it's great watching him. It's impressive. And then, they follow him this full match, or this whole attempt on the Uprising side. Most of the spectator is on him, and his performance here is a big influence on how easily Uprising progressed through this map, and they're able to full cap. So then we move to Spark on attack. Spark have a similar experience through point 1 and point 2 with a smooth progression, but they end up struggling for point 3. They do end up full capping, but once again, not with much time left, which is becoming a theme. They don't have much time, so they get one attempt, and the Uprising are able to stop them. And then on the Uprising's chance on round 2, they have twice as much time, right? So they kind of just play it patiently. Once again, RCK has some great decision making, which they focus on as far as hacking targets and then building that EMP. They wait for the EMP, they get the EMP, and they kind of win that fight. They extend out, but they do end up winning and taking this map, making it 2-1 overall. So now we move into Junkertown. And once again, Uprising on attack. So they start with Pirate Ship, which is something that I thought more teams would be doing at this point in the games. But, honestly, I think people are going for the more GOATS comps and still focusing on those here. But teams are starting to break it back out, especially the teams that have people that play Roadhog. Since there are a good chunk of players in the league that are really good at Roadhog. So, Uprising start with Pirate Ship here. But Spark ended up actually breaking through it. So, everything I just said kind of goes out the window. And they stop them from being able to set up again. And that moment kind of leads to Spark full holding because the momentum goes in their favor. And then Spark go on attack and Uprising start this aggressive defense. They rush the door immediately to try to get, a lot of quick fights since they don't have much room for the cart to move. Doesn't go in their favor, right? And then Spark are able to use that kind of alt economy advantage to progress the cart smoothly because it's a super short distance, and they end up tying the map advantage up 2-2. So we go into our 5th map, which is our control map, to break the tie, and this is going to be the map of the match. yeah, this is pretty insane. I almost don't want to talk about any of it. And I don't know how much you all are going to hate me for doing so, but it's on Lijiang Tower. And so this is what I'm going to say, go watch this. Go watch this map because this is some of the most insane Overwatch, most exciting Overwatch you're going to get, right? It's at that level of things we've talked about in the past because I really don't want to spoil this. It was really fun to watch. And you'll see how that one turns out because both those teams wanted it bad. Right. And that's kind of the best Overwatch you get is when you get to that moment where it's moment defining. It's not just for map diff, it's for the win. And both teams really want to win it. And they fight tooth and nail to do so. So now we're going to move to our next match, right? Which is Dragons versus Hunters. So Dragons, they got their win this season. It was a big thing. And now they're just playing like a better team. Not even like a bottom tier team. Which is what people expected. They look dangerous, and a lot of other players are talking about how dangerous they look. Hunters have also been a topic of discussion, right? Because they're probably one of the most diverse teams as far as roster. Like you're essentially looking at a 6-man roster that are all flex players and good flex players, right? So it allows them to do a lot of things that other teams can't do, and they practice those variants that other teams aren't practicing. So Dragons give them room for their money. I mean, we start on Lijiang Tower here, and both the rounds in Lijiang Tower have pretty much an identical performance from Dragons. It looks like just like they played the same map over again because they get the initial cap quickly before essentially entering a fight that's super extended. Most of these fights, it feels like each round is only like 2 fights that are super extended because they do a great job of capping and then dragging the fights out. So they're just building percentage and then eventually winning those fights. And then rinse and repeating and then winning the round. They do this twice. They take both rounds and they start off this series 1-0 over the Hunters. Once again, surprising. I went into this kind of in the pocket of the Hunters just because of their performance so far. Even though Dragons don't have a terrible record. I think they're like 3 and something at this point. So we move into Paris and we have Yao Zhanlong. I completely butchered that, right? We're going to say YXL. People have been calling him YXL. I'm going to call him YXL because it's a mouthful. This is his first appearance. He used to play for Miraculous Youngsters like forever ago. It feels like a decade ago, but in the early days of competitive Overwatch. So you'll probably know him from there. And Miraculous Youngsters is a great name for a team. I still hold to that. Sounds like a superhero group, like a young superhero group. But he subs in for Bacon Jack. And then we have Gaguri stepping in for Diem here, which is kind of a tell for the Dragons because Diem has the ability to play certain, DPS characters where Gaguri is a, diva / Zarya player. So they're probably going to focus more on tank heavy comps. We start with Dragons on attack here, and Dragons struggle. They struggle since they're kind of unable to find a way to get past the Hunters' far Torv junk composition, which is very difficult. Most teams here are playing Bastion, where they're opting for the junk, and it works for them. They opt for the Torv instead, giving you that 7th man, so that pseudo 7th man turret, especially if the turret management is good. So it causes trouble for the Dragons here, and they're not able to get past it. And then the Hunters go on attack, and they actually break out quad DPS, which, triple DPS is we've seen a lot now from every team. Quad DPS, not so much, but, the goal of quad DPS is to cause so much disruption and to just get a pick that once you get that pick, it just kind of flips the momentum in your favor, even though you play from behind by not having that extra tank and healer, right? And they end up taking this. So it ties it up 1-1 after Paris. We then go to King's Row, and DM subs back in for Gaguri, so that opens up kind of their character pool there. Even though Gaguri wasn't playing bad, I will make that clear. Like, she doesn't get subbed out because she's playing bad. She gets subbed out for certain options. Hunters on attack. So Hunters kind of meet this resistance constantly throughout this map, but they are able to get close to point 3 before getting held there. They're never able to really get a free move. It's kind of like they're fighting for every inch this whole attempt. And then we move to Dragons, and the Dragons don't encounter the same struggles. They actually have a smooth transition through all the points. Hunters were unable to contest point 2, which is interesting because what they do, is Hunters or Dragons get point 1 and they immediately go double snipe. And then they put this pressure where they essentially fight up on point 3 while the cart's just kind of moving through. And YXL does kind of slow them down when he swaps to McCree as they get to point 3, because he's actually popping off. I didn't know he was known for his McCree, but it shows. Clearly, it's very, very impressive. He seems very confident on it. And then, the Dragons are able to leverage their alt economy and the large time bank, because they didn't have to fight any fights really on through the streets of Kings Row, which is, in my opinion, the hardest part. So that bought them a lot of time. The Dragons end up capping and winning this map and going up 2-1. So this, once again, is surprising to me. And then we get to the map of the match here, which is Junkertown. And, Gaguri subs back in for DM. Bacon Jack subs back in for YXL. And Dragons start on attack. And Young Jin is actually playing a ton of Roadhog. So I talked about, Pirate Ship being a thing again and teams using it. And Young Jin is one of those players who plays Roadhog really well. And he's actually been playing Roadhog outside of the Pirate Ship comp throughout this whole match. So if you want to see some Roadhog play, go watch this match. The Dragons start out with Pirate Ship, as I said, and they have a smooth card progression all the way through point 3 before a brief stall, and then they're able to get the cart moving again after a few team fights, and they full cap with about a little bit over 2 minutes remaining. And that's good on on Junkertown, right? And then the Hunters go, and the Hunters kind of steamroll through point 1 and 2, which is concerning for them. And then they absolutely get stonewalled. Like, for some reason, the Dragons turn something on, and this is the point where I would say this is what the peak Dragons performance looks like, especially from the combination of Gaguri and Gamsu, because this is like a well-coordinated tank duo performance. It's super impressive. They're getting a ton of confirmed kills, and like their ulting is perfect and everything's in sync, and it's amazing to watch. So check this out, just to see that kind of potential playing out. The Dragons be able to hold point 3. It's a great back and forth, and they end up winning this match 3-1. So, a surprise, I think, for many people, to see the Hunters, who have been giving so many, higher ranked, power ranked teams trouble, and the Dragons kind of coming in here and asserting their dominance, sort of. So that was a fun one to watch, and unexpected. So then we're going to get in our feature match. So our feature match is the Battle for LA. So last year, I think they played like 5 times or something like that. I mean, we had 40 games, right? And they are in the same division. So naturally they played a bunch. And there were a ton of battles, but it's one of those rivalries where it was kind of one-sided, because Valiant were just dominant throughout all those. I think they won all but one of the battles for LA, but the fans are amazing, right? Like, either way, everybody's having a good time. And that's one thing that stands out here, is this is the loudest game you're probably going to have until we get to like the playoffs, right? Because you're essentially fighting for the hometown. Half the stadium there is purple. The other half is green. They all have their chants. They have a bunch of them, and they're not they're screaming the whole time this match is going on. Even as it starts to tilt in somebody's favor, and it's a battle for real. So a hell of a way to start off. So we start off with Lijiang Tower. Sorry, our control map. We start with Gardens, and the Valiant start off well. They get it to like 76%. They look like they're in control, but then once Gladiators flip that point, they don't get it back, and then they're stealing this round from the Valiant. And then we move to Command Center, and this round's more back and forth than the beginning, from beginning to end. But there's a one fight at the end where the Gladiators just play it better, and they end up winning that fight, getting an all advantage, and then taking the map. So they start off with the win here and go up 1-0. And then we move into our map at the match, which, also turns out to be something a little special. We get Surefour showing up again from the depths of who knows where. He's kind of been out of the loop, mainly because, there were some performance issues where Gladiators were struggling in the GOATS comp. Surefour has a deep pool, but so does Hydration, and Hydration was just kind of playing better at that point, and was more flexible as far as needing to go to the brig. But we have him subbing in for Void actually here. And this is the part that kind of confused people. Well, it's kind of a tell, right? It's another tell, kind of similar to the DM Gaguri situation, where Void is an off tank, so that means that, okay, well, if Sheriff is coming in, they're trying to play either some wonky comps that involve triple DPS situations. And you also never forget about Shaz, right? Because Shaz can play anything. So if they want to do things extra weird, that is an option as well. But we start with Valiant on attack here, and they start with the Sombra dive comp, which we've seen in the past and we've seen last season. It plays kind of similarly to that. While the Gladiators use this Orisa May Bastion Widow on a Baptiste comp on defense, which is kind of like the bunker comp with a little bit of flair added on top of it with the May, right? And that's obviously being played by Sheriff. And KSF, great Zarya. What we've noticed though is when he has to swap to Sombra, it's like AKM. You remember AKM blades from, Genji blades from last season? Yeah, this is probably worse. And the Reddit did not let him off easy. He takes the whole time, pretty much almost 4 minutes, to charge his EMP. That's bad. That's real bad because there's no fights that are fought until he has his EMP. That's kind of the point here. And it takes actually Agility's getting a Genji blade to kind of push this fight, and they end up getting the attempt in overtime to cap. And then they take that fresh time bank, go to the second point, and have the same amount of struggle. This time KSF is not on Sombra, right? They kind of ditched that plan. So that's obviously not going to work out. And they have to deal with this Gladiator comp, which is in a more enclosed area, and they continue to struggle. It's funny because you watch it, and most of the time they're showing the Gladiators set up. And even in my head, I'm like, there's no way in hell I would want to play against something like that. Especially a team that has the ability to play all those characters at a high level and then set up properly. Like if you had problems on point 1, which was open, then putting it inside of a building is not going to make it any easier, especially with that Baptiste ult. So then we move to Gladiators on attack. So Valiant got held on point 2, and they come out with Surefour and Reaper, and the crowd goes nuts, right? Because everybody has talked about, since the Reaper changes, they meant nothing. It didn't change anything. He's not a GOAT's counter, and that's kind of true here. He does come out. He lives for, an extended amount of time. It's exciting, but doesn't really do much, especially after he misses out on a kill on Custa, which probably would have been very important to kind of give them the edge. He never gets a true ult off here. Ends up swapping. He swaps to Sombra and then builds an EMP so fast that it definitely had to embarrass KSF on the other side there, because that EMP led to that point 1 cap that they got. And then the Gladiators get to point 2, and the Valiant kind of step up their game. All the time bank they have, they end up stonewalling the Gladiators and leaving this map in a draw. So yeah, this Battle of LA is going deep, because the weird thing about second map draws is that if you're the team that's currently losing, which is Valiant, you have to win the next map. Like, you can't lose next map, because then there is no chance to push it to a game 5. It kind of decides it there. So our third map is Eichenwald. And Eichenwald, we have Void subbing in back for Agilities, and we have... Oh, we don't. That's not wrong. That's not right. But yeah, we have Void subbing in for Agilities, and then we have Valiant on attack here. So Valiant, they get a quick point 1 cap, but they seem to progress successfully. They can't progress successfully through point 2, so they get held short of bridge. There's just a bunch of good fights. Gladiators are using the elevation more. There is this one interesting thing that happens where I think Roar gets booped off and falls onto that bridge. So under the bridge, there's a little side passage on that castle, or part of the castle, right? He falls there, and then Fate also gets knocked off, but then falls there as well. So they just fight in the bottom for a bit, and that's kind of the antithesis of this fighting on point 2 is them essentially chasing each other around this map, trying to force fights. Since there's so many entries and exits as far as elevation is concerned. But this goes definitely in Gladiators' favor, and they're able to hold point 2. Gladiators go on attack, and they struggle more than the Valiant did on point 1, where it becomes kind of concerning. But they make up for it on point 2, and that leads to a cap and then actually a map win, which, like I said, because of that draw, puts them at 2-1, which technically means they win the match. So Battle of LA 1 going to Gladiators. But we do have the map diff, right? So Rialto is our map diff here. We have Valiant on attack, and they try to get this win, because it probably doesn't matter for the Valiant as much as it would matter for the Gladiators. Maybe depending on how the rest of the stage goes, it would matter more for their stage playoffs. But in the overall scheme of things, they've been struggling so much and their map diff is so bad that it wouldn't be a big deal yet. Obviously, we'll know more further down through the season. But yeah, so we have Valiant on attack. They have a hard time on point 1. They do end up capping it on their final, fight attempt. And then after a few more stalls through street phase, they get held short of point 2, which is something that's been happening constantly. Not a lot of full caps in this overall match. And then we move to Gladiators on attack, and the Gladiators also have a tough time on point 1. And they almost win an important fight, which would have allowed them to cap and then continue the progression until Fate lands a huge shatter that swings this into their favor. They get one more fight, but they end up getting full held, and Valiant are able to add this map to their map differential. But the Gladiators do win this battle for LA. One thing to note is that Ripa actually subbed in for Shaz for his first appearance on stage for this last map, which is cool, right? The commentators made a good point, which was that, this is one of those times where the stage is as, I would say, crowded as it will get, right? Because you're talking about a packed stadium. It's all roaring fans, right? And yeah, the importance of the fight's not there, but you're kind of giving him a game-like sense of performance, especially for his first time on the big stage. And that's important. I mean, a lot of sports do that, like teams, especially like towards the end of the season. If they have a losing season, they put in players they wouldn't usually put in. If they're up, a huge amount in like a basketball game, they'll put in players who probably want some more experience. And the bigger the game is, the more important that is, because you have a bigger stage to perform on and to get comfortable on. But yeah, so that's our 3 maps for the day. So as usual, you can reach us. This is kind of a quick one for us before we head into week 3 of stage 2. But Gmail. You can reach us at thebirdwatcherspodcast@gmail.com. Remember, on Twitter, we're now podcast TBW. That's our Twitter handle. So check that out. We're no longer the old one. This one's easier to remember. And then Facebook and YouTube, we're the Bird Watchers. If you like to listen on YouTube, we're there. And Reddit and Instagram, we're the Bird Watchers Podcast. Competitive Overwatch Reddit. If you haven't joined, join. Conversations are great. I made we hit the 200,000 not too long ago. It's still ongoing. People are still going back and forth. A lot of great conversations. And the info is constantly flowing. Mod's doing a great job. Keep that up, Mods. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll be back with stage 2, week 3. Of course, we'll be back with stage 2, week 3. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Until next time.
I have destroyed more of your kind than I can count.